I'm in Houston, Savannah. I'm actually up in Kingwood, so about 80% of our community flooded during the
Ugh,
hurricane.
ouch.
Yeah, it's kind of insane.
And then Santa Fe happened just what, this weekend or something like that, and
Yeah,
that's
it
in
was
Houston too.
Friday. It was Friday. It
Oh,
was awful.
tired of hearing of bad things happening in Texas.
Yeah, yeah. So, and where are you situated?
I'm in New York.
Oh, okay, very
Yeah,
cool.
we try to ruin everybody's vacation. We populate the streets with homeless people that urinate freely. I mean, it's an
Oh,
awesome place.
my brother-in-law and sister-in-law live in New York.
Oh, okay. What
Yeah,
what
so
part?
Um, gosh, they moved. They used to be near Washington Park. Is that a thing? Or
Square Park?
yeah, down there, kind of close to NYU, I think, is where
Oh,
they live
gotcha.
now.
Yeah, that's Washington Square Park. It's
Yeah,
beautiful. West
yeah,
Village. I'd
yeah.
live there in a heartbeat. Crazy expensive. Back in the day, it used to be bad. Like nobody'd want to live there. Now it's like everybody wants to live in the West Village.
Oh,
It's
okay. Yeah,
crazy.
I've been to New York once. I went for their wedding, and that's
Oh,
all of it. So yeah, I would love to go back and visit, but yeah, we were there for a couple of days and just got the highlights. So.
it's a different world, isn't it? Texas and New York.
Yeah, very. Yeah, very. I remember flying into New York and there were no trees anywhere. And I just thought, oh
Oh,
my, there's
there are
no trees.
trees. You know what it is when you see a tree in New York, you appreciate it more.
Oh, I see, because it's a rare species.
Exactly. So when you walk down the street and there's a tree and it actually has leaves and it doesn't smell horrible, you're like, yay, look at that. There's nature. And you might hang out there, or, it might be surrounded by dogs going to the bathroom, and you never know. You're not missing anything. I lived in Dallas for about a year when I was
Okay.
younger. I didn't really enjoy it.
Yeah,
It's so
Dallas,
hot in the
it's
summertime. It's
it's
so hot.
hot and there's mosquitoes. There's so many mosquitoes. They're like, oh, I remember I was driving in a car and I was checking out, it was for work, and I was checking out this vacant like space. It was like this big like piece of land basically,
Mhm.
and the mosquitoes could smell us from the car, and they were like probably about an inch long, and they were
Ugh,
attacking the windows.
that's
It
horrible.
was like something from like
So
post-apocalyptic.
you'd hear them platter against the window with their
Yes,
wings
it
or
was like
whatever.
little
Oh man,
pings against the window of them hitting it. Oh, it was
that's
awful.
crazy. That's crazy. Alaska's supposed to be the same way.
Really?
Yeah, like really, really bad mosquitoes. I mean, you wouldn't think so, with it being
No.
like frozen most of the year, but yeah, supposedly you get like swallowed if you leave your tent or your wherever you are. It's crazy.
Never heard that.
Have you always lived in Texas?
Most of my life, yeah. I did live in Chicago for about a year, which I love. That's where I met my husband. And then I got a better job offer back here in Houston, so I moved back.
What was he
So,
upset about that, or did he end up following you, or were you already married by then?
no, he followed me. He doesn't like cold weather at all, so he was
Oh,
happy to move. So,
what was he doing in Chicago?
huh?
What was he doing in Chicago?
Well, he lived a little bit outside of Chicago. He was actually a full-time skydiver, and he played saxophone in a Dave Matthews tribute band.
Okay.
So
So,
we met when I went skydiving one day.
did you say he's a professional skydiver?
Yeah, he used to be.
Oh, used to be. So you won't let him do it anymore?
Oh no, he still does it. He does it for fun. He just
I can't
doesn't
do
do
it.
it for a living.
When I was a kid, maybe I could have jumped out of planes. I did jump out of planes when I was a kid. When I was in the army, that's something I did. I looked forward to it. I tried to go airborne, they wouldn't let me. They wanted to spend the money on the infantry or whatever, but I would have done it then. But now I'm too close to dying as it is. You know what I mean? Maybe I got 40 more years left. I'm not going to risk it on a plane. Just not going to do it.
It's not for everybody. I actually got about 100 jumps in. I got my A
Wow,
license, and
that's
then
so cool.
I realized skydiving is not for people who are clumsy. So
What do you mean? Is
after,
there a story attached to that?
well, I sprained my ankle on a berm. I almost ran into a tree on landing, and it was just, I just decided that it's just not for me. It's just not worth the risk.
Did you say 100 hours or 100 dives or 100 jumps?
100 jumps.
It's pretty significant.
It's really not that much. My husband has, I think, close to 4,000.
Wow. But
So
did you ever get to the point where you're jumping out on your own,
yes. Yeah,
packing your
I had my own rig, my own, yeah. So I jumped
Wow.
out on my own.
Yeah, that's impressive. I mean, you've got your own life in your hands, basically.
Yeah,
You gotta
yeah.
hold that thing. Do you guys fly too?
No, 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 I can't. No, no. My husband tried to take some pilot lessons, and it would just, you know, it just didn't work out. We didn't like it very much.
Well, you're a writer too. So do you think
Yeah.
that living this exciting life where you're all over the place, New York, Chicago, the sky, do you think it influences your fiction at all?
It does. Yeah, for sure. So a lot of I'm trying to think if I've actually pulled any of that in. So I have a series or a book set in Chicago that I pulled in, obviously my experiences living there. My books tend to be a little darker. So I bring in some of I guess, the suspense elements of the excitement. So
Mm.
I write adult suspense. And yeah, so I think like getting in touch with the more, I don't know, dangerous side of things lets you kind of
Well, I
tap into
mean,
that
yeah,
adrenaline.
you live in Chicago. It's dangerous, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
Well, it lets you tap into the adrenaline, right? And
yeah,
so tapping into that emotion, that kind of
that's
high
interesting.
emotion, it lets you write to that a little bit better.
So you're living in Chicago. It's obviously exciting. You're jumping out of planes is obviously exciting, and you're writing exciting fiction, so it influences it.
Sure.
Do you think there's an arc
When
to skydiving? I mean, is there when you start a skydive? Do you think that kind of correlates to a story where it kind of starts kind of like you're working your way to the door and you're not exactly sure what's going to happen? So much could go wrong, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's this moment right before you jump out of the plane and your toes are gripping the edge of the plane and you've got your hands on the outside and the air is rushing past you and you're above the clouds. Like you're so high, like the height doesn't even make sense in your mind anymore. And then you jump out and there's like this very short moment of weightlessness before gravity grabs you again and starts pulling you down. And I think that's kind of like jumping into a new story. So like you're
Yeah,
on the edge of that story and just for
totally.
a few moments you've got the idea, right?
It
And
all
you can
starts
jump
with a sentence, right? It all
right, you can
starts
jump
with a "Let's go skydiving," and then
yeah.
everything beyond that is part of the plot. I mean, it builds itself up. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, so like for me, stories always start with a question. It's always like a what if or a why,
Mhm.
and so you can kind of jump into that question, and then sometimes a story just it just pulls you in, and the ideas start tumbling, you can write it out. And then other times, like the last story I wrote, which actually just finalized in the Daphne, which I'm really excited about, um, it it came to me in like these disjointed pieces, which is really weird because normally I write very linearly, and this book just came to me like in these like random chunks of time. So I ended up writing the story a little bit like that. So like there's a broken timeline in the story because that's just the way the story came to me, which was
Yeah.
a lot of fun to do.
Are you primarily a novelist? Do you write
Um,
short fiction too?
well, I'm working on a novella series right now, but primarily I do novels, all fiction.
Mm.
And then I also run a couple of different retreat things for authors. So I
Oh
do.
yeah, we're going to get into one of your retreats because that's pretty much why I found you and got excited
Yeah.
to talk to you. But no, in terms of writing, I write short fiction. I love
Okay.
short fiction. I constantly send it out to publishers, and I fill my novels with short fiction. Basically, I'll write snippets here and there. So when you say you write in chunks, so that's how you wrote that novel, that makes sense to me. But normally, what are you, an outliner?
Okay, so normally I write my plot points. And normally, this last book didn't work this way, but normally I know the end and the beginning, and I know like one or two plot twists that I know about the story. And then that's it. Like so I'll write those down. And so my outlines are like maybe half a sheet of paper. And then I go from there and kind of let things just happen. So I'm
Mhm.
not a plotter, but I'm not really a true pantser either. I'm not quite sure what that would be. It's somewhere in my, I'm a hybrid.
I think most people are, right? I mean, you might have an idea going into a story, like an ending. Oh my
Hmm.
God, that's like the dream, isn't it? When you know where you're going.
Yes.
I hate having the headlights turned off and you're basically just driving in the dark, hoping you don't hit a tree.
Oh, that's so hard. Yeah, this last book, like I didn't know how it was going to end until probably I was 80% of the way through the book. I'm like, this is not okay.
No, it's not. And
I
then when
need to
you
know where
find
this is
out,
going.
my second novel, I had an ending eventually. I wrote most of a story before I found it, and then I had to go back in and add so much stuff that I deleted most of what I already wrote.
Yeah.
It's kind of heartbreaking. And you pull it off and make a document out of it, right? But you're never going to go into that and use it again.
No, no. One of my books, it's with my agents. I'm about to go on submission again. So I don't, whenever I cut scenes or whatever from a book, I don't just delete it. I go and put it into a tossed lines file so I don't feel so bad.
But you
Um,
never go back into it, right? It's not
no,
like you're
you never
ever
go
going to
back
use
into
those
it.
lines.
But that file for that book is now longer than the actual book.
No kidding. What is it? What's the word count on your thrown away?
I think it's at 75,000 words. But
That's
you know,
crazy.
I always think so. There, what's the saying? If you write a million words, or if you read a million words, or a million hours in something, you're an expert.
Yeah, no,
So I kind of
it's
feel like,
10,000 hours of one activity makes you an expert in
yeah,
something.
yeah. So I kind of feel like I was just like, it's just building me up to like
Yeah.
reach
What
expert
number do you
status.
think you're at? I think about this occasionally. I wonder what number I'm at because 10,000 hours is actually a lot. I mean, I got my degree in English. So I'm not about to do the math on that, but it's a lot of time. I wonder how
Yeah,
far into it I am. Have you thought about it? Do you have an estimate of how many
not
hours you put into it?
not like that. I started writing about 10 years ago, but I didn't start really doing it seriously until maybe like 4 or 5 years ago.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't think I'm anywhere near the 10,000 mark, but I don't
Getting
know.
there. I mean, every day, right? Every moment, every word.
Yeah.
So you're represented by an agent. You went the old-fashioned route. You're not an indie publisher by any means, are you?
Right. No, the goal is to eventually be hybrid. So I'm represented by Deidre Knight at the Knight Agency. She's actually, I met her through my cruises, the author retreats that I run, and got to know her. And she's just a
So she
fabulous agent.
participated in your cruises. She was
Right.
a
Yeah. Yeah.
participant.
So I bring on an agent on all the cruises, and she was the agent, and she's been a dream agent of mine for years.
Oh, okay.
And primarily because she is also an author herself. She's also a New York Times bestselling author. So I felt like she really got me.
Hmm.
Whereas I had an agent in the past who didn't really seem to understand what authors go through with things. So she would ask me to like jump through all these hoops that didn't make any sense, didn't work with my process, and made me like kind of work against my own creativity. And then so that relationship obviously didn't work out.
Hmm.
But with Deidre, she really gets the process. She gets how creatives need to work, and she allows me to be exactly who I am. She allows me to be the author that I am,
I see.
which I think is huge.
Well, let me explore. What did the other agent do that was opposite of that? Because that seems like the most. I mean, you're a business and you're taking on somebody into your business. You're going to make sure the personalities mesh, right? I mean, you're not going to try to
Right.
make that person into something else. So this scenario sounds really comfortable. What was the other agent doing?
Yeah, so I think at the time I was a young author, and I think that I just really wanted an agent. And I think if I had,
By hook
had
or
a
by crook, right? I mean, you're going to take anybody.
yeah,
You're going to do anything to be published, and that's how mistakes happen. In my experience,
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. And so I didn't do my homework on her, and if I had, I think that I probably would have found some things out. But basically, she required me to write a detailed outline, which I've already said, like I don't work that way. It just doesn't work for me. It kills the creative process for me to do that. And like a scene by scene outline, I send her 50 pages at a time for her to review. And so it was this very kind of like corporate formulaic process to writing a book, and it didn't work like at all.
Never
Um,
heard anybody say things like this before in terms of their
yeah, yeah,
being
it was
asked to do
very
a process.
strange. And after I talked to people about my experience with her, I found out she's like known for doing this to authors. So it wasn't just me; she was doing this to like a lot of authors.
Yeah.
So
But
yeah, so
what's the end goal? Is she going to
that
sell to publishers, or is she going? Are you? I mean, you said you want to be hybrid, so Is this a situation where you're going to be publishing your book online on
Yeah.
Amazon or other forums or whatnot, markets?
So,
And
so the goal has always been to write for the traditional houses. So
yeah,
have and I've always wanted to have happen is have a publisher come in and want my books and contract with me and me to have at least 5 books through them to have them help me launch my career. And then once I have a bit of a name established for myself, then to go hybrid and have my own books that are also attached to my name that this publisher helped me launch. So that's been the goal since the beginning. I've talked to a lot of best-selling authors who have gone hybrid, who were traditionally published, now they do both, and all of them, they love going hybrid because they do well in self-publishing. But it's what I've found from them is it's because they're starting off with a reading base that's been developed for them
yeah,
by
exactly.
traditional houses. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for. We'll obviously see how it all happens.
How are you developing that reader base? Is there
Right
something
now,
that, yeah,
I'm not. So I try. It's hard when you don't
yeah,
have books out there yet to get people to be interested in who you are as just an individual, as a human being. And I think whenever you have books out there, then obviously readers have a reason to connect with you.
hmm
So, part of what I've done is I've tried to build platforms with cruising writers and another writing retreat business I've just started up that we'll talk about. And then I guess post a lot with a lot of different award-winning blogging sites that are for writers, but I'm hoping that it gets my name out there and helps, my name to be familiar to people. So whenever I do have a book to release, I have a lot of connections that can help me spread the word. And, I'm not just a lone voice out there. I'm hoping
yeah.
to use the collaboration of the community, I guess, to.
It's very interesting because I do discount the idea that because that's what you do on Twitter, isn't it? I mean, basically all of the people I interact with on a daily basis are writers.
Mhm.
Nobody's out there going, please give me more words to read. They're going, hey, read my stuff too. But
Right.
at the same time, I have a list of people that I'm fans of that no matter what, and in any conversation that I'm in, I will drop their name in a heartbeat. Like Andy Weir, who started out indie, right? I mean, he started out on a website, writing his own stories and publishing novels on his own. He might be world famous now, but it happened. And I
Right.
say I enjoy his work all the time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think there's something to be said about having a community to support you,
Yeah,
having kind of
totally
your
agree.
your writing tribe. Because what I've found with at least like with social media is you can't really reach readers through like Twitter very
No,
easily
we
because
can't. They're not there.
they're not there.
Or if they are there, they're watching a GIF, or if they are there, they're doing something other than discovering author
Right.
voices.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm trying to figure out what's the best way to reach those readers. And so part of what I like to do is just to build relationships with the authors that I have in my tribe and support them whenever they have a release and hope that whenever I have a release, they'll support me as well. And I think that shared kind of collaboration and sharing your networks, something like that. I
Yeah.
think that's a good way to reach readers, but I've never tested it for myself, so I don't know.
Well, it's interesting because, I mean, honestly, when you go traditionally published, like say I take a novel to Random House or Penguin or whoever, I'm writing a novella for the tour submission for July.
Hmm.
Say they take it. I mean, there's a lot of weight there. I mean,
Yeah,
they swing it like a weapon, and people pay attention to what they're producing because that label on the top portion of the spine means something to somebody who likes to read.
right.
I mean, that's being obviously winning the lottery, I would imagine. I mean, it's so hard to get them to say yes to you or even pay attention to who you are. And having an agent, I guess, imagine that goes in the right direction.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, Deidre's been able to get me into closed houses, or to like she can kind of cherry pick which editor to send my book to, because she's got a relationship with that publishing house and she knows what editors are going to be best to read, the not just my genre but the specific elements within my story. So
Hmm
she takes that work away from me. She takes care of that for me, and got this huge network of people that she knows that she can much more easily navigate those waters than I could.
It's very interesting. I just don't trust agents. I
And
just
I
don't.
think,
I mean, like, give me I want my 10%. I'll do all the work myself. My thinking is exactly the same, though, man. You need somebody who's going to swing that weight for you. And I
yeah.
like magazines. I mean, I really think that's where the readers are, right? They're producing tons of interesting stories. And if they take one of mine, then I'm going to have eyeballs on my stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's another way to go about it. I think what I've learned from, just years of being in this industry and working closely, because with my retreats, I work closely with agents, editors, and authors. So I kind of see both sides of the table from where I'm at. And everybody's got their own path. I mean,
Yeah.
one of my authors that came on my first retreat, her name's Tina Holmes. She's a New York Times bestselling author. She's a Canadian author, but she's getting really
Hmm.
big in the States too. And she started off self-publishing. And
Self-publishing novels or what?
yes, yeah, she's
Yeah.
self-publishing novels. She got a lot of sales on Amazon. A traditional house noticed her, picked her up, and now she's published with a big publishing house, and they're supporting her and sending her out in this big, huge book tour. And so her path was traditional publishing through indie publishing, and it
Mhm.
worked well for her. And then other people have gone the reverse of that, and other people still are just sticking to self-pubbing and doing phenomenal with it. And I think it just depends on your temperament and your
Definitely,
personality.
yeah. I mean, the
Example.
numbers are so small for those people that went indie and then popped hard traditional,
Mhm. Yeah, they
right?
are.
I mean, it just doesn't happen very often.
No, it doesn't. And I feel like that window has passed. Like, so,
I
like,
agree.
say,
Unfortunately, I mean, the fantasy of like, what was that woman's name? She's English. She does podcasts, but she talks to authors as well. Anyway, she has like this formula that kind of pushes you through the indie process. Have a great cover, make sure the story is edited really well. But now, I don't know, does it matter anymore? Almost everybody seems to be competing on the same kind of field.
yeah, I agree. I've got a lot of friends who are indie right now, and they're having a hard time cutting through the noise, because it's. And I read an article the other day about
The
this, about
cult of
how,
the amateur is what I call that noise. Everybody wants to be the one that breaks through and everybody's producing
yes,
content. And a lot of people are just copying that formula. Here's a fantasy story, here's a science fiction story. There's no voice, there's no individuality. And unfortunately, that's what that cult of amateur does, is kind of blur everything else out. I mean, I don't
right.
know.
And yeah, I read an article the other day about how we have basically had to make our readers, like the Amazon readers, the ones who weed through the slush pile. So, we've kind of moved the slush pile away from the publishing houses and put them
Yeah,
onto,
Amazon.
Amazon, and now it's up to the readers to wade through that and find the ones that are, those great books that everybody's looking for.
I have talked to a few people who say they actually do try to wade through that giant slush pile, but I'm word of mouth, right? I
Hmm.
constantly am looking constantly, well, constantly looking for content of all sorts and comments and articles and this and that and the other thing. I'm probably going to be more directed to something I heard about than discovering it on my own, unfortunately. And I don't know, maybe that, I don't think I'm unique in that.
No, I don't think so.
People want to be handheld. That's why we went with like 4 channels of television programming for so many decades. People don't want to have many options.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think that things are in flux right now on
Mhm.
how people are finding information, and how readers are finding
I would
books.
amend that statement to how people are paying for information or content for that matter, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Because I
Yeah,
mean,
because
we all want to make a paycheck and do something with it, but nobody wants to pay you to do anything either.
that's true. Yeah, that's very true.
But you offer something. I mean, to get around to your cruises, you are offering something people want to pay for.
Yeah, so what I've and I went to so many different types of retreats and conferences over the years, and
Yeah,
what I found was either I was in a place of high, deep learning, where I could really focus on my craft, but I didn't get any of the business benefit from being
yeah.
there, or I would go to a conference and get low learning on craft, but and get like a wide, I guess, base of people to talk to network with, but I never got to the ability to develop deep relationships with anybody influential. So I formed Cruising Writers to marry the best of those two worlds together. So you get you get 7 days of really deep learning craft. So you really get to focus on your writing craft and have time to write and to focus on editing or whatever skill set it is that we're offering for that cruise. But then also you get to spend 7 days with an editor and an agent who, even if you aren't into traditional publishing, they have such deep knowledge about the industry, what's selling, what's not, marketing tactics, et cetera, et cetera. You get to spend 7 days with them developing an actual relationship. Um, I have like the agents that have gone on my retreats, they're always emailing me to ask how so and so is doing from that retreat 2 years ago.
Oh, that's
So
interesting.
it's yeah, so you do have the opportunity to develop these deep relationships that you don't normally get. And then also I bring on best-selling authors who are very open about their experience in the publishing industry, the good, the bad, the ugly. And we have learned so much from these authors and gotten such an interesting look at the industry that you don't normally get, because it's not something they're going to go up there and say in a keynote address. So you kind of get a behind the scenes look at
Yeah.
the industry and get some really helpful, I guess, guidance and advice, and that you can put into practice like right there. Like one of the things that I always do is a marketing session with our best-selling authors, and they'll sit down with you and say, okay, what are you doing? Where's your newsletter
Nothing.
list? They'll give you feedback on, okay, well, you're not really branding anything. Let's talk about that. And so I feel like it's offering a good thing for everybody who comes. I
Yeah.
get really good feedback in the retreats.
It's interesting. Do you notice that a lot of these professional authors that you have on your cruises, are they deliberately pointed towards the success they earned, or is it an accident that kind of ended on their laps or in their laps?
Um, I feel like they have all said that they happen to be in the right place at the right time and put a lot of work into that before they got there.
So that
So
they're ready when they actually came.
yeah, exactly. So I
Yeah.
feel like, yeah, so that seems to be the common theme that I hear from them is they worked on their craft for years. They failed and failed and failed and kept on getting right back up and trying again. And one time when they tried again, they hit a list. So actually,
Hit
Rachel,
a list.
Rachel,
Explain
yeah.
that for me. What does it mean to hit a list?
So hit a New York Times bestseller list, a USA Today
Oh, I
bestseller
gotcha.
list.
Okay.
And so they've all talked about that moment where they've kind of broken through. So I guess they've broken through their career ceiling of where they were. Like maybe they were, a B-list author for a while. They were making enough to make this a good side business, but not necessarily a full-time career. So like Rachel Kane, who's coming on our cruise in October,
Hmm.
she's a household name. She had actually a failed writing career, I think back in the 80s, and she actually had to rebrand with a new name, and she'll talk about this. And so she's one of those authors who, she's had a very slow growth over 40 years, and now she's published, I think 2 series in 2 different genres that are both hitting lists all over the place, and we're like,
That's so interesting.
yeah. So I mean,
That's another thought that I constantly have is that Dante wrote, the comedy of all comedies, but yet we don't know anything else he wrote. And I'm pretty much sure it didn't take his entire life to write Dante's comedy. You know what I mean?
mhm,
The great works are not necessarily the only work that the artist produced in their lifetime. And
right.
there's going to be other stuff that they produced that wasn't well received. I wonder though, it's interesting that she changed her nom de plume though to something else, so she wouldn't suffer what the reputation of having a failed. What's a failed? She
Well,
published stuff and it didn't sell very well.
yeah, so she published. If my memory may not serve me totally correctly here, but I believe she had a publishing career with a New York publisher, and her series didn't sell, and so she had to change her writing name
So
to
interesting.
get publishers
That's a
reinterested in her stuff.
that's a stigmatism from that industry
Yeah.
back then, right? You're a failure. You didn't sell enough books. Oh, she probably could have been herself, right? She probably didn't need a nom de plume, but she chose to have one anyway because of the trauma the industry kind of pushed at her when she was kind of going through it, I imagine.
Yeah, yeah. She's if you go to her site, she's got a kind of her story on there. And it's really interesting. I'm really looking forward to hearing from her this October. Um,
Who have been some of the most exciting guests that you've had on the cruise?
um, hmm. Well, let me think about that. I mean, we've had some big names on the cruises. Jay Wells, she's a USA Today bestselling author. She writes like paranormal detective books, urban fantasy, but she's kind of switched a little bit. And I love her books. So she was one of our first ones. Shelley Adina, who writes steampunk, and she's a best-selling author on Amazon. She's indie. She's one of the hybrid authors. She was published by Harlequin and a couple other big names for her Amish romances. And then she wrote a steampunk book that the big publishers couldn't place anywhere. They just didn't know what to do with it. And so she published it on her own, and it's just doing extremely well. Um, and let's see, H.M. Ward was going to come with us to France. She ended up having to back out at the last minute, but she was a pretty big name that I thought was kind of neat. Geneva Lee is another big name that's come on our retreats. We have like a good kind of range of authors, anywhere from like just starting out to selling millions of books. So, yeah, I don't know if any of those names ring a bell, but those are some of the big ones that we've had.
Do you think authors would get upset if I sent out an invitation for them to be on my cruise and they showed up to the dock and it's like a rowboat and we're just going out a little, just going out a little bit of ways and we're going to talk some writing and then I'll bring them back? There's no money, right?
I don't know about that.
You think that might upset people? I don't know.
It might, it might.
Just an idea I have. I don't know if I'll go through with it or not. Um, talk about ruining careers, huh? Yeah, get me on the get me on the news. Man, yeah, that's so cool. That's actually how I discovered you. Just kind of going through and wondering if if writers do have kind of cruises. The Star Trek thing with that they do occasionally, the Star Trek cruise or whatnot, had me
Yeah, the
thinking,
same cruises.
right? I mean, yeah, I mean, people have to want to go on cruises for various things like this too.
Right.
Are you alone in this, or are there other kind of workshops
Um,
happening on the water as well?
so there are a few others. I think the Florida RWA chapter, they have a uh, conference on a cruise. It's not a retreat like what we do. The other thing about our cruising writers is I limit the number of attendees. So we have a small group that goes,
Mhm.
whereas a lot of these other places, like they'll have 200, 300 participants. So you're basically doing a big national conference or the size of the big national conference on a cruise ship. So it's kind of different. I actually haven't found anybody who's doing exactly what I do.
How
I
many
did.
people do you have on yours? I'm sorry. I know you probably already told me, but I can't
No, it's
remember.
fine. I cap it at 30. We typically have
30.
between 17 and 25, which ends up
Do
being
you
a really
break
big
that 30 up into smaller groups
group.
of people and float them around, or how do they interact with each other?
No, so we do a big conference group. So we have a big conference room, and we'll go in there for the writing workshops. But then we break out and we do like individual workshops at lunches. We'll do breakfast ones. We'll do write-ins together. We go dancing together at night. We eat dinner together. I usually do some sort of fun like party. So for the October cruise, we're doing an 80s costume party one night. And then for like the days we're on shore, like everybody breaks off into groups. So I have a closed Facebook group for the retreaters, and we get together and we plan our shore excursions before we show up. And so even if you don't know anybody before you get there, you've got a group to hang out with the entire time, and you kind of
It's
get to know people
interesting.
on the Facebook group. And
I mean, as an introvert, this sounds horrible.
I get that a lot from because I mean we're writers. The majority of us are
Yeah.
introverts,
Don't
and
talk to me.
so
Don't look at me. Why are you making eye contact?
yeah, so I get that a lot from a lot of people. They're like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know. Like I was so nervous about signing up for this." And but it's kind of nice because you get to know each other a little bit through the Facebook page. And so like you're like having screen time with a friend, so you kind of have like that safe barrier. And then when you get to the cruise, then you kind of know this person a little bit more,
I
and
got that. I
yeah.
really do. I mean, I started this process. I started this podcast over a year, no, just a little under, man, maybe a year ago. I've done about 130 of these, and I've talked to a few people over and over again. I've developed kind of a friendship, and if I did meet them in real life, it would be like, oh, okay, I know you very well. So, I mean,
Right.
if you're starting it on Facebook, totally makes sense. I mean, people want to talk about their craft.
Yeah, yeah. And so yeah, we do every Friday I sometimes have to make them, but I make them post their favorite lines they've written for the week, just so that we get that encouragement from each other, because I think that so many times we operate in a vacuum, and it's really easy to start thinking, "Oh my gosh, I suck. This sucks. No ways are going to write this. No one's going to read this, blah blah blah." And so having a kind of close trusted group of people that you can go to and say, "Hey, I wrote this. Does it suck or not?" And having me able to
Yeah.
say, no, it's great, or why don't you try this a little bit? I think that's really valuable.
No, it is very valuable. I mean, I did my undergraduate in creative writings. I mean, I had workshops all over the place, and one of my favorite things was to get a story ripped apart.
Yeah.
And there's nothing better about it. I mean, there's websites out there too, zootrope.com. You put a story and people have to read your story to post one of their own. You just get lit up. I mean, you learn what you're doing wrong because people really
Yeah.
don't want to be reading bad fiction and they're stuck reading it. So they get mad at you. You're
Yeah.
forcing them to read your story. No, it's
Yeah.
brilliant. Criticism's the best.
Well, yeah, constructive criticism is the best. I wouldn't say criticism, all types of criticism is the
Well,
best.
yeah, I mean, you don't want somebody to tell you. And I almost had somebody say this, broke my heart. The first line of his review was, I've never told anybody that they should break their fingers to avoid ever writing again. And I read up to that point, I read up to the point in the review, I'm like, holy shit. And then he stopped and said, I'm not going to do that this time either. But it was like, you bastard.
Oh
Hurt
my
me.
gosh, that's
You hurt me
awful.
bad. Yeah, it was horrible. But reading back on that story, there were so many grammatical errors. It was unbelievable. I was kind of embarrassed in retrospectively. You know what I mean? It's like, okay,
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
had a point.
I feel like people need to like take a class. Like it should be required to take a class before you leave a review on how to leave a constructive review, because I think people forget that we're human. Like they read our books, which are our products, right? And they forget there's an actual human on the other side of those pages, and so they just fire off things, and
Well,
they
the thing about it is, though, I mean, as a student, you're kind of forced to read stuff you really don't want to read. So when you stop being a student and you have a book in front of you and you can't get into it, you're not going to force yourself to sit there and read it because you don't care enough. You know what I mean?
right.
I mean, the only criticism an author should hear is whether A, their book got read perfect, or B, was it put down and never picked up again. I mean, that they don't need to know if their grammar sucks or their story sucks or their character doesn't work. I mean, A or B, what happened? If it's a B, then
Yeah.
you need to continue working on your craft because something's missing. The
Yeah, but
bad,
if they don't get specific with things, on the flip side, just playing devil's advocate, then you can't know what it is about your story that isn't working.
well, we talked about craft a little bit to start out, just a tiny sliver, but I mean, that's what it is, isn't it? I mean, in terms of writing, it's not going to be the first novel. It's
No.
going to be the 100th novel or the
Yeah.
1,000th novel. And it's going to be one of those novels that'll pop off, and it'll be because you don't really give a shit about that novel.
Right.
That's the
Yeah.
novel you don't care about.
Right. Yeah. And I'm starting I'm starting a series of novellas with one of my friends. We're going to co-author it, and we're doing this series because we want to just have fun writing. Like
And that's
we
all it
have,
is, isn't it? It's
you know,
stretching that thing. It's
yeah,
blowing
and
up that balloon and seeing how far you can get it before it pops.
yeah, exactly. Like we want to have a writing project that is just fun. There's no burdens. We don't owe anything to our agents. We don't care if it sells. It's just fun.
Yeah.
And so we're both like really
That's what I
excited
do
about
when I
it.
read it. I do the same thing when I write a short story. I'm like, okay, you know what? Let's go crazy. What can we do? Let's
Yeah,
pull apart the fabric of the universe and see what's on the other side of it. Why not?
yeah.
Nobody cares what I do. You know what I mean? They're not trying to stop me from doing it. So I'm just going to do it, see what happens. And I've gotten stuff published and out there, and it's like, okay, cool. Let's keep doing it.
Yeah, and I think there's something so important in that, and just like relearning how to play with your creativity and not
Right.
taking it so serious. Because I feel like, and I started a new business called Creative Wellness Retreats, that deals with this very thing. Because I feel like whenever you start working to be published, you take away that playfulness out of the creativity, and you put all this burden on there, and so
Hmm.
it becomes work, and there's anxiety and stress, and that's not what it's supposed to be. It's supposed like create like we are so like unique and that we get to use our creativity and put it out there for other people to see. And that that that's something that we shouldn't lose. Like we shouldn't lose how special that is that we get to do that.
Most people that I talk to say they wanted to become a writer when they were like 9 years old. And you know
Yeah.
what I'm pretty sure of is that no 9-year-old sat there and said, I'm going to be the best marketer and cover artist designer in the world and run it
Yes.
all.
Yeah. No, they just all you want to do when you're 9 is tell a story that you have running through your head and you
You just
don't
want to be
worry
crazy,
about if
right?
yeah, you
You
don't
just want to
worry
be
about if
crazy.
anybody's going to read it or you don't
Well, you
worry
want
about
to, I mean, what do? You go to your mom immediately.
yeah.
What's your mom supposed to say? Awesome. Not supposed to say anything else.
Yeah.
And she's supposed to give you $1 million. I really don't understand what's wrong with the publishing industry. It's supposed to work like that.
It is supposed to work like that.
I don't know why my doctor keeps telling me I have affluenza disease. I don't know what's going on in this world. I deserve $1 billion.
We all do. We all
Yes,
do.
but I deserve $2 million. Oh man, so yeah, that's so cool. I really appreciate the idea of a cruise that you can go out and and write on and meet other people. I mean, that's basically what we do, isn't it? We are on a cruise, we're on like a raft where we're alone, struggling to do something, and at the end of the day, we don't know what we did until somebody else tells us whether or not we succeeded.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, and and it's really I didn't expect for this to happen with these cruising writers retreats, but what has happened is there's been this very close-knit writing tribe that has formed and they come off these cruises and everybody stays in contact with each other like for years.
that's
And
so cool.
I've had some of my retreaters fly from New York to Seattle to visit each other. So it's like and they're people that previously they were kind of they were in that loner writer category and they've connected with other writers on these retreats because you know you've got a bunch of like-minded people on each other and everybody's wanting to work on their craft and meet people and work with um, their books and their skill set and it's just it's a great place to meet people and develop real relationships that maybe you can't do at a big conference because we are all introverts and it's easier to stay in my room at conferences and not talk to anybody.
I mean, if you want two people to talk, what do? You put them in an elevator or a boat?
Yeah. A boat with
Like,
drinks.
a boat with drinks. I mean, perfect. And a dance floor. Actually, I would never touch that dance floor in a million years. It would never happen.
Oh, you'd be surprised.
Uh-uh.
I'm very influential. I,
Uh-uh. Nope, I don't do it. It's really embarrassing. I just can't do it. I did at a wedding once when I first met my wife, and she married me anyway, so I guess I
that's
didn't do
great.
too badly, but man, it is painful to dance. I don't know where that comes from.
Oh, yeah, no. So whenever I take my retreaters dancing, we're the silliest, like nerdiest group out there. I mean, I'm out there doing like the sprinkler in the middle of the dance floor. I mean, it's total fun. It's just and we don't really care about who's out there watching or looking. It's just like this total just like fun
Are
play
you an
release.
extrovert? Are you a person that loves being around people and
No, I'm
no,
not.
you're not?
No, I can turn. I'm an introvert. I can turn on the extrovert when I need to, but I'm an introvert.
Isn't that always the case? You could turn
Yeah,
it on, but then you
yeah.
need to turn that sucker off. And if somebody forces you to be on all the time, you'll get mad, right?
When you get exhausted, like
Yeah.
so sometimes I'll have to go back to my room and I'll turn off all the lights and then just sit there in the dark for 20 minutes because that's what I need to recharge. And I think knowing that about yourself and understanding like what kind of personality types you are really helps you
Oh,
recoup
yeah.
as creative. And
It's
the
not an excuse, is it? It's not like saying I'm an introvert and I only have to do the thing introverts do. It just gives you an idea, launching pad of who you are and what you need to kind of work around.
Yeah, exactly. So I think so the creative wellness retreats that I'm starting up, it's based on that idea is understanding what Myers-Briggs personality type you are so that you can better understand how you create. So because I feel like all of us we create in different ways. Like this goes back to the beginning when we were talking about like your different process. So
Yeah.
everybody has a different process that they use to get into creating and editing or whatever else that it is. And understanding what elements of your personality are strongest and weakest, and that helps you understand, okay, what parts of the day am I most effective, how am I most effective in
Yeah.
using, like, what sort of like tools can I use to be more creative and to sink better into my creativity.
How can I
um,
do this better? Basically, I mean, that's what it is, right? It's moving past being an amateur to a professional. I
right.
heard the greatest quote about being an amateur. An amateur tries to do something, right? But a professional just does it. An
Oh,
amateur tries to tell a story. An amateur tries to write a novel, but a professional doesn't have to try because he's done it so often. I think it harkens back to that 10,000 hour thing, right? I mean,
yeah.
the more you do something, the more those muscles just can't do anything but that.
Well, and two, there's another way to take that is a professional, they just do it. So even if
Yeah.
you aren't like
There's no
skilled at
doubt
it,
because already they know that when they produce, and this is the sad part, right? They already know that they're going to get a paycheck for it too because they're a professional. You know what I mean?
well,
Yeah.
yeah, but I think you can look at it too as an amateur tries, as in like they try and then we quit, and then we try again, and then we quit. And there's like this kind of like halting progress. Where a professional, they're gonna try and they may fail, but they're gonna like build on that failure. They use that failure as a stepping stone instead of just a block,
No, that's
right?
very true. And honestly, I was just thinking, being paid, getting a paycheck, it doesn't have to be money, right? I mean, you can get reward from so many different things. Being done with something, you know what I mean? You give it to somebody to read, and there are no more edits to go through. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're done. The story's done. I could send it someplace now, or I could put it in a collection or whatever you have. You mean it's finished. That's a nice little payday.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it because I think that we have to celebrate the small successes, because there's so much rejection in this
I mean,
industry.
how long does it take you to write a novel? 6 months?
Um,
A
you
year?
know,
Longer? Less? I mean,
it depends on what I have going on in my other life. Like
your real
three.
life versus the writing life. I gotcha.
Yeah, yeah. So 3 months is usually a good turnaround time for me, but that doesn't include editing. So it's probably 6 months from start to finish.
It's
But
half a year. I mean, how many do you have? 160 of those? I mean, if you could
it,
produce a
no.
novel every year since you were born, I mean, basically.
No, I've got I'm trying to remember. I've got three finished books. I have
Mhm.
another one that should be done by the end of the summer. So, um, and these are books that like they've been through the ringer with editing and more editing and more editing and more editing.
And
So
you've been through publishers too. You've gotten the rejection letter of all
I
rejection
yeah,
letters.
I actually I had 22 rejections last year from very good publishers.
So what happens? I mean, do you look at these? I mean, I've heard. I had my mentor in college said, you take a rejection letter and you go, whatever, man, you send the story right back out to see what happens with the next person. And then after like 10 or 12 rejections, then you start looking at it and go, okay, maybe it's me.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah,
do the same thing with your novel?
that's exactly what I did. So, and it depends. So I had 22 rejections between two books. Okay, so my first book was a YA fantasy about sirens. And the the feedback I got from the rejections was just like all over the place. That so there wasn't like one thing that I could fix and make it work for anybody. It was just like not a good fit for anyone.
It's like the
So
taste of anchovies or something.
yeah, well,
It's
it
just not
was
going to
like,
appeal to
well,
anybody but people who like anchovies.
it's because what happened is I wrote a YA novel for teens, and what
Oh, is
editors
that
want.
Nocturne? Is that
Yes, yeah, it was Nocturne. And so what editors actually want is a crossover novel because adults are going to read it.
so
And I didn't.
sucks, man. They
Yeah,
suck. They really suck. They really just don't know what the hell they're doing. I hear
yeah.
shit like that and I think of J.K. Rowling. I'm like, you didn't know anything about that either, and you lost $1 billion worth of
Yes,
sales.
yeah. So, and I still have people who come up to me who like read my I know a couple of the judges who read my book, like, before they knew it was me and I knew it was them, and they came up to me, and this was like 3 years ago, and I kept like I had somebody come up to me like my last art debate meeting and say, "Did you ever do anything with that Nocturne book? Because I still remember that chapter and it was phenomenal, and you need to do something with it." I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, maybe I do. Maybe I do need to self-publish that book and not, let all those rejections that I got last year take me down."
I
Um,
talked to an author. She was one of these really lucky people who submitted a one of those hashtag synopsises things. You know what I'm talking
yeah,
about?
yeah.
And she won, and she got a contract through a publisher. It was like, it's like one of those 140 character. Oh my God, I'm a 100,000 error or whatever. But she did the same thing. She has like 7 or 8 novels, and she kept writing them and getting the rejections, but continuing to write the novels and
Mhm.
not being hung up on, okay, well, you didn't like that novel. It doesn't matter because I've written 8 more since.
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of my philosophy too. I've gotten good at letting go, and I think that's important. Is not to get hung up on, okay, if that book doesn't sell, I'm not a writer. It's just, that's not the only story I have to tell. I have so many. It's just finding time to write them all. And at the end of the
Yeah.
day, like I enjoy this, and I know if I don't write, I'm not a very nice person. Like I
Yeah,
need to
exactly. Right. I mean, my
I,
wife can attest to that. If she doesn't let
yeah.
me come down here and do it, I'm mad all the time.
Yes. Yeah. So I have to have this creative outlet. So regardless if they don't sell, and I hope one day they do, I'm going to keep on doing it no matter what.
Yeah.
So, for me, I let it go. And, and so like my other book, it's called Down, Down Deep. It's an adult suspense. And there were like very clear things that many editors had problems with in the book, but they were things I could fix. So I've spent the past 6 months going through and fixing those things, and we're about to send it back out to these editors, and who have said they would read it again if I fix these things.
There's
So
nothing better than a personalized rejection. I
yeah,
mean,
and
honestly,
every
it's like,
rejection I've
okay,
gotten has been personalized, which is really nice. And honestly, I think that's the benefit of having an agent because they're more likely to send a personalized rejection to your agent than they are just some random author out of a slush pile because it's much easier to send an
especially,
agent.
man, if she's made them money, right? I mean, if she sent them
Yeah,
talented authors and they've published those authors and been able to sell those books and like, their paychecks guaranteed, they're more like likely to
yeah,
send you notes. I mean,
exactly.
that's pretty cool. I mean, I was wondering, we're working on an hour now, so I'll probably let you go pretty soon. But just about being an indie versus being professionally published or traditionally published. Do you think, I mean, me personally, I made a mistake. Like my first novel, I got upset because I couldn't find an agent. I couldn't find somebody to read my stupid novel at all. I was getting like just canned rejection letters over and over and over again. So I'm like, okay, Amazon, here's my dumb novel. And it ruins it right there. It automatically becomes an indie work and you can't do anything with her from that point on. Whether are like the novel or want to rework the novel, it's always going to be an indie. Do
Hmm.
you think that you besmirch your name by putting something out there on Amazon as an indie author, or just, I mean, just speaking from this other author who won the hashtag war, she did not publish any of her work. She just kept it, held on to it.
Yeah. Um, Gosh, besmirch, I hate to even use that word because I feel like it's derogatory. It's derogatory. I don't think indie authors are, here's what it is. I think
Well, it's not about
publishers
the
are
author, right? It's about the world. It's about the
right. And
world
I
of
and I think
readers.
publishers are in the business of making money. Okay. They're a business. We like to think that they're going to help us make our dreams come true, but that's not it. They're there to publish a product that's going to make them money. That's what a publisher does. And so
Yeah,
if you've got a product out there that you have self-published and it doesn't have sales, okay, now the publisher can go in and judge all your future work based off of that one thing, that one product you put out there, because they're saying this author has this amount of sales per year. We can see that.
which is
And
nothing.
which is nothing. Exactly. For most of us, it would be nothing. So, yeah, I feel like doing that, if your goal is to be traditionally published, self-pubbing before you are traditionally published, I think could hurt you. So, what I would do, and this is kind of my plan, because I am planning on self-pubbing some books this year. I'm doing it under a different name, just because I want to give the books that I do want traditionally published. I want to give them their best chance at success. Just I don't want to give a publisher the opportunity to judge me harshly for sales of a book that I'm just publishing to have fun with. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, I totally appreciate that. Not necessarily certain about the name change, though. But again, that does answer my question of, are you worried about being independently published based on the perceived opinion of independent
Yeah, and
publishing?
and I would love, and like what I plan to do is I'm still marketing the two together. So I wouldn't like hide that from readers. They would be able to understand like, okay, this author is this person, this person. I'm not going to hide any of that. It's more just from, I think, a publisher's perspective. They want a clean name to start with. Um, so that way they don't have to overcome like bad sales. Like just say like you did put out a book out there that had tons of grammatical errors and blah 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 and got bad reviews. They would have to overcome all that.
Yeah,
which
they
I
want
think
the rookie quarterback that's going to win the Super Bowl the first year.
pretty
You know what
much.
I mean? They don't want the haggard 40-year-old who's got artificial hips out there throwing a ball.
Yep.
They
Yep.
want dry pony. Man, what a great conversation. This has been lively, and I really appreciate you being willing to come on and talk to me. It was a lot of,
Yeah.
it was a lot of, it was always exciting when somebody answers back, send me more information. Like,
Yeah. Well,
yes, an opportunity.
thank you for reaching out. This was a lot of fun, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you and get to know you. And yeah, I mean, if I'm ever in New York, I'll look you up.
Oh, cool. So let's finish this up. I tend to ask some questions, just three, kind of constantly editing them, so I have no clue what I asked in the past. Mainly, though, I am curious. I mean, what is some of what is I don't know. What would you give as advice to the people on your boats to keep trying? I mean, obviously they're working hard, but what do they
Yeah.
come to you for
Um,
words
I
of wisdom or whatnot?
I think what I would say is to remember that this is a journey. It's not a destination. Meaning that you can focus on the individual failures and individual wins, and if you focus on just that, um, it makes the whole process really hard because you're in this constant fluctuation of I won, I lost, I won, I lost, I won, I lost. But
That's
if you can,
exhausting, isn't it?
yeah, it's
Constantly
exhausting.
measuring yourself against other people.
Exactly. But if you can remember that this is a journey, and if you can enjoy the process of the journey, it makes the whole thing more enjoyable. So just keep in mind that, it's all just part of the process. And
Really cool. I like that a lot. I mean, that really is appreciated. I mean, I'm a writer, right? That's not the destination.
right, exactly.
Unfortunately, the destination is probably a crematorium, and then whatever the hell you leave behind is really
Yeah, if you want to look at it like that.
inconsequential
I
at
mean,
that point. It's really amazing how wasteful it seems life is on this planet if you don't put some kind of bigger thing on top of it. I love that for science
yeah.
fiction, right? As far as speculative fiction, you can put that topper on anything and just
Well,
make it more meaningful,
and I think part of the thing that calls us as writers is leaving our stamp on the world after we're gone. You
right?
know, we want to be memorialized, and this is
Shakespeare.
our way to do it.
Man, now we're not going to be Stan Lee though. Man, that dude's been around for a long time, producing a lot of words. And the sad thing is, as literary as you might want to be, winning Pulitzers or whatever, that dude's going to be around 500 years.
Yeah.
Him and Spider-Man and all what he did during his lifetime is probably going to be forever etched into humans'
Yeah, that's very true.
zeitgeist. Just to move it along, the second question I have for you is I'm really curious where people can find information about the cruise, where people can find information about you. Where can we find you on the World Wide Web? Where
Sure.
would you like people to go to?
Yeah, so you can find out more about the cruises at cruisingwriters.com. And my other retreat business, it would be at creativewellnessretreats.com. And then you can find out more about me at christinadelay.com.
And is October booked up? Are you
It is
still? Do you,
not. Nope. We still have openings, and I'll take bookings up until the end of August.
okay.
So yeah, it's going to be a great group, and we're going to have a ton of fun. There's going to be 80s costume party. And then we also have our December immersion cruise, which is a little different format than we normally do, and that is filling up pretty quickly. But it's an intensive deep editing cruise. So if you've got a finished manuscript and you're looking to really polish it with a world renowned psychologist who works with the authors, this would be the cruise to go to.
That's interesting. I do have a manuscript I'd love the deep edit on. Is it appropriate to ask how much these cruises cost, or is there kind of like a bells and whistles add-on type thing where it depends on what you're willing to put out?
Yeah, so the October cruise, I just had to up the price because the room rates went up. So it starts at 1850, and it just depends on if you want a shared room versus a private room and what room type you want. And so it goes up from there. And then obviously, if you have your own, like a lot of my retreaters use their own cruise points to cruise, so you can book the retreat just by itself. And I believe the retreat just by itself is about $1,000. And then the December cruise, it starts at 1595 and goes up from there.
Okay. Well, that's something definitely. Do you want me to include those numbers in the show notes?
Sure, yeah, you can do that.
Perfect. And well, you know what? The last question I have for you is, what are you reading right now? Recommend anything? New authors? Are
What
you
I
reading
am
anything
reading right
exciting?
I'm reading this really interesting book, and it's very interesting. It's called, I'm pulling it up right now, The Good Samaritan. Um,
Oh, is that the CIA? No. What is it? Tell me about it.
no, oh my gosh, this book is so twisted. It's called The Good Samaritan by John Mars, and it opens up with one of the main characters who is on a a helpline, and she is actually helping people commit suicide. So
Interesting.
yes, it's very twisted. So it's a very interesting book. I'm really enjoying it.
Oh, fantastic. And thank you so much. I really appreciate it again coming on and talking with me today. And I hope to have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, you too, Bryan.